these are $10 wallets, and this is a $1,000 wallet. And in this video, we're going to go through the process of making both and show you why they cost what they do. We're first going to dive into the $10 wallet. Now, at this price point, most people will use cheap materials. I like to use nicer materials and make a very simple design because that'll last a lot longer. And for reference, my family members carry this wallet, and they've been carrying this exact design for 12, 13 years, and it just does not break. Now, a lot of the things that we'll do to make this a little bit more affordable is we'll batch together processes like this. If you're not going to use a die cut, which I would suggest for something at this price point, what you can do is to batch cut multiple pieces at a time. So you'll see here, instead of individually cutting all the wallets out, what I'm doing first is adding that curve to all of them at the same time. This is going to save me a bunch of time at the end because I don't have to cut this curve individually. I can just go right down the line. After this is done, what we're going to do is we're going to cut some straps out of the scrap leather of this hide. Now, for reference, if you buy a square foot of Sedgwick or 2 square feet, you're going to be paying $30 or $35 a square foot. In order to get a wallet down to this $10 price point, you're going to have to buy your leather in bigger pieces. A side of this leather is about $15 a square foot, and that allows us at 4 wallets per square foot to really get our margins to the point where this makes sense as something to sell. Next thing is, we're just going to round off all of the straps, and we're going to use tools for this. We're going to use strap end punches. We're not going to cut the curves by hand. And then if you can do things like batch punch holes, little simple things like that, that's also going to save you time. I want to make sure when I'm making these wallets that I'm not making a cheap wallet, I'm making an affordable wallet. So that means that my quality, the material quality, the hardware quality, all of that needs to be up to par. If I have to batch burnish like this, that's okay, because I'm going to get a nice enough finish that I know these wallets are going to be presentable for $10. At the end of the day, you can only do so much for $10. And as you can see, we got a nice shiny edge for $10, so I'm not complaining, and no one usually does. Now we're going to install some solid brass hardware. This is important because brass does not rust. And double cap rivets are going to be fine for this because they're not really going to be stressed out that much. So instead of using solid brass rivets or solid copper rivets, which take a ton of time to set, we're going to be able to save a little bit of time to offer this product to our customer at this price by using simple double cap rivets. The nice thing about double cap rivets too is this is a wallet that you can kind of teach anyone to make. So if you need to bring in help to just make these style of wallets at an affordable price point, it's pretty easy to hire someone and show them how to do it really quickly. And that's it. So as you can see, we have a beautiful English bridal wallet. You can see I made about a half dozen, a little bit more. And this is also a great design. Any $10 wallet design, I think, is a great design for when you want to use that scrap. Now let's get an $1,000 wallet. You know, we're going to start with croc here, and we are starting with a beautiful piece of the tail. This is a matte black American crocodile hide. Now, I'll be the first to admit I am not the person who makes this quality. I don't do the $1,000 wallets. So let's just say this is an approximation to show you what kind of goes into making a wallet this expensive. It's important to note that if you're buying a wallet from an individual maker, they are probably not going to charge you $1,000 for any sort of bifold. At $1,000, $2,000, I think Hermes charges $3,000 or $4,000 for their croc wallets. You're paying for a name, you're paying for a brand, you're paying for a house, you're paying for status. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically go buy the Hermes or Louis Vuitton playbook here. We're going to use some Saffiano, which is an Italian coated leather. And that is going to be our lining in black. And then on the interior, we are going to use a nice tan color to contrast. We're going to hand punch all of these holes. And the thing you will notice here is that a lot of bigger houses at this price point are not hand stitching their wallets. They are machine stitching them. So that's a way that we can kind of get a little bit more quality into a wallet at this price level, even though I would probably only charge about $300 for this, maybe $350. This is that Saffiano I was talking about, and this is a custom wallet design that I made up specifically for this wallet. At this price point, I'd be looking for something bespoke for sure, but you can grab this pattern at the link in the description for a couple of bucks if you want to make one along with me. Everything's going to be hand cut at this price point because it's only making one, so it's very special. And we're going to make sure that all of our edges are as thin as possible by going through and really skiving out all of that extra material that we don't need. Now, this will do two things. It'll make it a lot easier to construct the wallet, and it'll make sure that there isn't a lot of extra bulk when we go to give this wallet to the customer and they put it in their pocket. When we're gluing down everything by hand here, and we're using a very strong adhesive, because while the stitching will hold everything in place, the adhesive will do a really good job as a backup, not just a third hand, but it'll do a really nice job as a backup of holding those edges nice and tight together over time. And then, of course, we're going to hand stitch everything. Now, people like to argue if I do a saddle stitch or just 2 running stitches, and after 20 years and no broken stitches besides just wear and tear, I don't really worry about what it is, but I do want to make it clear that I am not a fine leather worker in a French style sense. So, like I said, this is an approximation. I don't want to ruffle the leatherworking feathers and make everyone think that I'm claiming to be a fine leather worker. It's not my style. Now you can see in this card pocket here, we're going to make sure that we stitch along all of the seams and edges. That's going to prevent the wallet from stretching over time. If you leave that unstitched, it will mold, but it could also really stretch out. And this nice stitching here ensures that that won't happen. We can also stitch the card pocket tops, but I don't really think that's necessary. Now you can see how thin we actually got this, even though it is a stacked pocket design. And what that means is we're not cutting the pockets like a T to remove weight. What we're doing is we are stacking the pockets, but we're using that skiving method to remove the weight of the leather on the edges so that it stays nice and thin. And of course, now we're going to punch through all of the different pieces before we made up the body to the exterior shell. Now, people do this differently. This is the way that I do it because I'm not formally trained, but I'm just using a little needle here to line up all of my holes. So I have all of the holes punched on the front and the back, and this is going to ensure that everywhere that's visible, I get the holes exactly where I want them. You could glue them together and punch them all at the same time. I am not skilled enough to make that work. And then we're going to just sew this up by hand. Again, a saddle stitch, there's nothing wrong with a machine stitch, but in my opinion, if you're spending this much money for a saddle stitch or a hand stitch product, that should be the norm, because this type of stitch is a lot more repairable. It's a lot easier. And we're also using polyester threads. So we're using some nice synthetic threads that will last much longer than cotton thread, as much as I do love cotton thread. And lastly, we're going to go through and we're going to paint the edges. Now, this is the beginning stages of edge paint here, but what this is going to do is create a nice glossy black edge and hide all of those rough seams from all of that leather that it's not the most natural leather. Saffiano in this sort of leather has sort of a plastic covering over top of it, and the croc leather can absorb moisture through an untreated edge. And here we go. So this is a beautiful matte black American alligator skin wallet with an Italian Saffiano interior, all hand stitched and all handmade, no machines at all. And we did the interior in a black Saffiano, so we have a little bit of contrast. You can see that nice white stitching. That's also something that I really like, is when contrast stitching is used on hand-sewn projects to really show the hand stitching. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.